Wow. Oh boy. Um, First off, I want to sincerely apologize for taking over a year and a half to put my thoughts out. I just got so wrapped up in, finishing NWR Origins and Engines of Sodor Final that, I just kind of didn't even pay attention to the current Thomas situation. And this is like the most requested video ever on my channel. I can't tell you how many messages or comments I've got. And I'm not going to do a full like video review with footage. That requires a lot of planning, and it's more prone to getting taken down by copyright BS. But I'm just going to put my general thoughts on. But this will probably be a pretty long video. But first off, I want to talk about like the impact this has had on the fandom. And boy, just stuff I'm seeing on Twitter. Like, I'm trying to remember what exactly someone said. It was something like BWBA is the worst shit to happen to Thomas. That's a fact. And yeah, I'm gonna swear in this video, so swearing alert. But yeah, so BWBA is the worst thing ever. That's a fact. If you don't agree, you're wrong. Things along those lines. And honestly, I just think that kind of attitude is unproductive and just kind of mean-spirited. I mean, we all have rights to opinions. I mean, heck, I love Cars 2, but I fully understand it's a shitty movie, and I fully, understand why people don't like it, and that's fine. It's just my opinion. Don't, like, put down others just because they have an unpopular opinion. I mean, that's just, uncalled for. But at the same time, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to, what's the word? Make something seem amazing just because it's better than something else or has something that the other thing didn't. I admit I've been doing kind of a lot of that with the Star Wars sequels, but that's a topic for another time. I think the movie reviewer on YouTube, Chris Stuckman, said a quote once that describes this perfectly. It's like finding a pile of shit, and in that pile of shit you find a rock, and that rock is something that's not shit. So you're like, oh, there's something that's not shit, but it's still in a pile of shit. So that's like bottom barrel scraping, I guess. So yeah, I don't want to come off with that kind of attitude, but you know I'm going to talk about the special right now. I may talk about the series in general later on. I still have to binge watch most of it to really. But as for now, what I'll say is the episodes I've seen are kind of hit and miss. I thought, yeah, with realism out the window, you have to throw realism out the window to watch them. And if you have that mindset, some of them I think are pretty decent. Like, Duck School, I thought was a nice episode. And even that episode where Thomas, met the elephants in India, that I thought, yeah, it's a stupid concept, but I thought that was just a fun little story. But again, that's a whole nother discussion. So what do I think of Big World, Big Adventures? So I went into this movie, when watching it, just with the idea that throw realism out the window. And, there's gonna be songs, there's gonna be, bouncing, things that are completely ridiculous. I just went in with that mindset, it's a given nowadays, and, that's a topic for another time, but that's what I was expecting. And as far as my final opinion, well, I don't want to say it was better than I thought, because I had really, really low expectations, but oh boy, how do I put this? I thought the first two acts were pretty decent. Third act I think was a total clusterfuck with crazy, stupid stuff, but I'll get to that later. So I guess the one word I can say to describe this is the most meh special. Boy, I guess it's like the most average, boring crap for a children's special. And So technically, I think personally, I don't like it, but at the same time, honestly, I just can't form a final opinion. But yeah, there's a generic one, just average, boring, but harmless, I guess. At least most of it. I mean, there are some pretty stupid stuff, but I'll just go off my notes. First of all, I think Thomas traveling the world, the idea on its own is a great idea, and yeah, where he interacts with different cultures, different types of different types of railways, etc. It would kind of be like a Top Gear special where they go, the ones where they went to like India or Argentina or Myanmar. So yeah, I mean, again, taking into account, you have to throw realism out the window, but I think that's a pretty good idea that could lead to many interesting stories. But that, of course, when I was watching and there's saying quotes like, "Oh, there are deserts to cross and jungles and so forth." I was just chuckling because realistically, it's like, oh yeah, there's terrorists, there's borders, there's countries like North Korea and Iran. I mean, yeah, but again, which speaking of, I mean, when does this take place? Like, I think around the 50s, but that would make it even worse, with the Soviet Union and especially China. But again, realism out the window. That's my mindset. And I thought the scenes on Sodor were pretty decent. I thought Thomas playing that trick with the fish trucks with Gordon, that was pretty funny. That was classic Thomas. And again, it's nice to see, characters like Sydney and Flying Scotsman in the background. Also, I think I saw Donald and Douglas. I guess fan service is another argument, but at least if they're keeping them within the universe, I'm fine with that. And of course, watching Ace's introduction. Oh yeah, Ace's introduction. There's a scene where like he zooms by the thin clergyman on a bicycle. I was laughing so hard, not just because it was funny, but because to me that seems like an allegory equivalent to Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder in The Last Jedi. Where someone's like, that's like a symbolizing, Mattel's like F you to the audience. But I don't think that was their intention, but I just thought that was kind of funny. But where I think the special starts to grade really badly is it does that whole little tank engine trope again, and it's been done to death. Like, but even worse, Thomas is a complete asshole. Like, god damn it. How many times is this Thomas doesn't want help and is a jerk to engines who offer it have we gone to? Was it like 500 or something? I mean, think about it. You got Great Discovery with Stanley, Misty Island Rescue, but I guess that was more of him just being incompetent. But then you got Legend of Lost Treasure with Ryan, and then Great Race with Ashima. So yeah, god damn, can we stop with this formula, please? I'm begging you. But moving on, I thought some of the visual Easter eggs and jokes I thought were pretty funny. Like during the Where's Thomas song, they were showing him like in New York with all the taxi cabs, and I thought that was a pretty neat visual. And I think there was also a Space Oddity reference where he was like in space, imagining himself in space. Ground control to Major Thomas. Yeah, ground control to Major Thomas. How did I not just pick that up? But yeah, David Bowie. And so yeah, and then Thomas somehow gets across the world very quickly, and I think he got loaded into a crane by Carly, and I mean not loaded into a ship by Carly, and it's just funny. Fat Control is like, you don't just load engines into ships or something. And again, this is more realism out the window. I mean, real life, who the fuck would just put him on a ship to, of all places, what was it? Like, Dakar, Senegal. And yeah, with me kind of being a geography nerd, I never thought I'd hear words like Dakar or Dar es Salaam and Thomas, but yeah, I guess more people know about geography than I do. And of course, with Ace, It kind of felt, like Cars, with the racers going around the world. I thought that was a neat idea, having race cars in the Thomas universe. But then again, that also brings a question of like who's operating them and all that. But I'll get to that later. I think Ace started out all right, just a kind of pompous, typical person. But then later on, god damn, he gets really degrading. Like, oh, you want to be useful? Do this. I don't know what the word for it is, but just stupid. Like, anyway, the trucks with the African voices cracked me up. It was just so, I don't know, just so unexpected. And again, Thomas is pulling, what was it, like 10 of them, which, is that really too heavy for him? But again, more of that realism out the window. Yeah, let's just keep thinking that. Realism out the window. And why did Sir Topham Hatt have to take a ship to Dakar? He could probably fly. Well, I guess, when does this take place? Assuming it was today, he could probably fly to Dakar. I mean, there's flights from, like, Paris to Dakar, Air France or something, and, I mean, why take the ship? Especially if Thomas is, like, taking it. He could get a head start. And, when Thomas, of course, meets Nia, and I will say one thing I was pleasantly surprised with was the character of Nia. Again, Thomas has this stupid trope again of not liking the new engine who wants to help him, but I have to say, the fact that Nia just immediately calls him out on his bullshit, that I thought was pretty neat. Like, most engines, they just look sad or go away and mope, but Nia's just like, oh, I thought you were a useful engine. I guess not, or I don't know what she said. But again, I like her sarcastic attitude, and I really like her orange color and her livery, and as far as her, replacing Edward and all that. Again, that's another story, but I think as a character, she's fine. It's just I hate it when they have to remove, a new original character and shoehorn in a new one, which may not have many personality traits, just for the sake of diversity. But again, that's a story for another time. I thought as a character herself, she's fine. And although, is the singing actress the same as the, voice actress? There was a massive contrast when she was singing. And it's revealed like her railway closed down and all that. But then how is she operate? Like, who is operating her? Who is in charge of her? How is she just able to leave Africa on her own? Like, but I think, again, I'll get to that later, the whole driver argument. And there's just a lot of strange things in this special. Like, the African truck started singing The Lion Sleeps Tonight to shoo away the elephant. That's just bizarre. Yeah, just, the scene of an elephant terrorizing a train. I thought that was a pretty funny idea, though. I can imagine Daisy being like, elephants always move when you toot at them, and then the elephant just goes ape shit and attacks her. Yeah, Dar es Salaam in the movie, it looks a lot like that, for your Trains 2010, or I don't know if it's in future versions, but Trains 2010 users, there was a route called like Port Ogden. I filmed all the Neil stories there. It's supposed to be some fictional Australian route, but that's what it kind of reminded me of. And then there was a Queco, the Garrett engine, which, reminded me a lot of the Sodor Garrett, the character I used for one of the episodes. And of course there are lots of geographical inaccuracies. Like, on the map, Rio de Janeiro is like 1,000 miles off its real location when they show it in the map. The location they show, again, with me being a geography nerd, that's more of like where Belo Horizonte or Recife is, but again, that's minor. And San Francisco, oh my god, I was like really excited to see, something I go to often being portrayed in Thomas. And again, this might have to do with like when the special takes place, but there is no rail dock at San Francisco in view of the Golden Gate Bridge in the way they've shown, let alone in San Francisco, period, in like the 50s. The angle they shown, to get that view of the bridge, you would have to be literally in the middle of the bay, so they would have to be like near Angel Island or something, and there was definitely no dock there. But again, I guess that's a minor thing. And they seem to just reuse lots of steam engines. I mean, not steam, props and like yeah, engines too. Like, and I get that, but at the same time, they reused some like English diesel designs for the American trains, and I can tell you, trains in the U.S. do not have buffers. Like they have that strange coupling hook, and so for me at least, that was a bit jarring. But for a little kid, who cares? That's another minor issue. I noticed the animation of the people looked very off. Not like the main people, but people in the background. Maybe they were reusing models or something. They just took a stock character and changed the ethnicity, but just something about the way they move. I just can't describe it. It's like something out of a Wii game, but the scenery I thought was hit and miss. Some of it was really well done, like Arizona or the desert and the rainforest, but then others like San Francisco, it was obvious they were just doing cheap rate reusing of certain props. But again, that's a minor issue. And I thought lots of the humor with Sir Topham Hatt was done really well, with him being on the camels. But then again, that brings the question like, why is he taking camels to find a tank engine? But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. And in the rainforest or jungle of the Amazon, we get another stupid Thomas trope, which is, Thomas doesn't listen to advice, which water, and gets stuck, kind of like Gordon and Spencer. And god damn, I mean, are you really that stupid? That gets even stranger when they use leaves to collect rainwater. Again, I'm not a steam engine expert, so I think it would take quite a while if you just use rainwater to get water from a steam engine. And is Thomas able to just suddenly control the weather? It just changed really quickly. And some other things I noticed. Is that Red Crane in Africa? Is that Beresford's brother? Oh god, you're giving me Beresford nightmares. And then there's issues like, how did the special is very quick and rushed. It jumps from place to place. Like, it doesn't show. How did Thomas get from Brazil to Arizona? From what I recall, I don't think there's even a road across through Colombia to Panama. Like, maybe he took a ship, but... And then, of course, you have a whole issue, like, are the gauges the same? But, again, who gives a crap about that? I think where the special starts to get, kind of degrading is when they reach, I think it was Arizona or Utah, the one with the desert. Yeah, this is where Ace starts to become, like, a sociopath. And, god, like, the race they have, the tracks, again, I know realism's not a major issue, but there are no tracks like that steep or windy in Arizona or whatever. But not even narrow gauge, so, yeah, I mean, I guess the action was pretty cool, and, the crash was pretty awesome, but this leads me into, the main thing that confuses me, and when he crashes in the desert, the driver and fireman suddenly jump out, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're still in this, aren't they? And that just brings up a whole list of questions that, like, are the driver and fireman, like, in this as well? Like, bottom line, I think they need to decide whether to keep the driver and fireman. Like in the Magic Railroad, aside from with Lady, the engines seem to all drive by themselves. And I'm fine with that, if it's an established thing in the universe. It's just when you have people in the cab, when Thomas is doing stuff completely dangerous and against, the regulations and all that, like, are these guys just complete idiots? So, they have to somehow address that. Honestly, that crazy American engine, well, first the diesel that came by, was she voiced by Holly Hunter? And then the steam engine. Honestly, I think this is my new favorite character. I want to see an NWR Origins for him. Like, who the heck is this guy? He is such a... The best way I can describe him is he's like that old, crinkly old guy in that Pixar short with the old guy, playing chess with himself. Something like Gary's Game, I think it was called. But yeah. And then, of course, it he was talking about, engines get left to rust out, and you see like an actual rusted engine. That got dark pretty quickly. I mean, again, I know like in the past they've dealt with dark subjects like scrap, but I don't know, it just seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, is that engine, was it a physical body? Like, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, what else? This Thomas, races away from Nia, and Nia, of course, gets mad at him, presumably, and oh boy, they get Thomas back on the tracks, and then somehow he gets to San Francisco, and this is, I think, the worst part of the special. Somehow they get from San Francisco to China, which, again, if this takes place in the 50s, like, where, that's not gonna fly, like, but, yeah, she goes up, like, what was it, the Rainbow Mountain, and, Thomas sings a stupid song that I had to just mute, and, this whole thing of Thomas tries to say, I'm sorry, I lost my friend, and, Nia's, like, mad at first, and, I just hate this trope where it takes them a while, just to make up and all that, and, God. It was nice seeing, Hong Mei, and in fact, no, not Hong Mei, Yang Bao, I think. Yeah, and he acknowledged that he saw him at the Great Railway Show. So I guess, yeah, this is canon to the regular Thomas universe. But the special just ends on it's from here on. There was like 10 minutes left. And there was still, like, the climax hadn't even happened. That's what I mean. The special was long, yet it was so rushed. Like, jumping from country to country. There was just really no main thing holding it together other than Thomas goes to each country chasing this Australian race car. And then, of course, Thomas goes from China to, back to Sodor, through Europe. And, of course, for that to be possible, you would have to travel through very dangerous countries like, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, again, I don't know when this takes place, but I need to stop, making geography corrections. I mean, you can see my mindset right now. I just put everything logic out the window. Then, of course, the special ends very suddenly. He and Nia come back to Sodor. Nia's like, oh yeah, I'm sad, I don't have a shed to go back to. Thomas says, join us, so she does, and then just, the ending feels unfinished because, Sir Topham Hatt is still on a boat, asking if he's seen a tank engine, and of course, spoiler, they see Ace is on the same ship. So, yeah, it just ends very abruptly. I was actually pretty surprised, like, is that it? I mean, I know it goes on with the show, but, yeah, that's big world, big adventures, and by God, I've already stated, it's painfully average. I don't know. I think technically, yes, it is the worst Thomas special, but Day of the Diesels, was just boring, aside from the third act. This was more of, first two acts were really, really, pretty decent, and the third was just, but as far as, like, the future of the show, and I'll talk more about this when I look at the episodes, just the incompetence of Mattel's marketing campaign. I think that is the main issue. They don't air the show on regular channels. They make it hard for people to buy the less than average wood trains, and the thing is, I can understand the intent behind some of these changes, because as much as I love the newer episodes, sometimes they did get to be, I was trying to look at it through a child's eyes, and something like Thomas and the Babysitter, I think I'd be very bored at. So, I think, to be honest, what Mattel's trying to do is, I guess Season 5 would be a perfect example. It was very action-packed, stuff like Rusty and the Boulder. yeah, it wasn't, downgrading the audience. In fact, opposite, with all those spooky episodes. But there are ways to make the show both entertaining for kids and adults. And I don't, honestly, I don't even know if I want to put this opinion out because I'll get accused of, not being a true fan. But Andrew Brenner, he's a great writer, and he's done some, well, not just him, but just season 17 through 21 in general. I think sometimes they took too literally um, inspiration from real life. And don't get me wrong, that's a good thing, but if you keep trying to make the stories as realistic as possible, you get stuff like Better Late Than Never, or a lot of the Christopher Audrey stories, which were not bad, but just boring. And I think, a few sprinkled here and there are nice. I thought Duck and the Slip Coaches was a good lesson in railway operations, but yeah, I mean, how do I describe this without. Thomas, is a kid's show, so, and I think sometimes we just have to accept that. But what Mattel is putting out, I think, is just completely beyond the level of kids show. It's just childish. It's just like putting something moving on screen to entertain your child. And it's not like insulting per se, but it's just like, what season 13 through 16 were doing, just recycling horrible cliched story tropes just to put action on screen. And I'll be honest, I think season, again, I haven't seen season 22 and 23, so don't. From what I've seen so far, yeah, yes, they're completely ridiculous ideas, but at least they have somewhat competent stories, It's not like. I'm going to have to just watch the rest of the episodes to make a full opinion, but. So, basically, bottom line is, Thomas has had much worse with, Sharon Miller era, so. But at the same time, that's just not an excuse to say, like, we're not as bad as this, so. That's just the dilemma it seems we're all in. When do we praise something for being an improvement versus something that's just trying to look better just because it has this? Honestly, what I'm going to say to close out is we'll always have seasons 1 through 7, so it's Thomas I grew up with. Maybe I'm missing something with the new ones, but so bottom line, I'm just going to focus on the. Yeah, I'll see the new episodes, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like I'm trying to. I don't want to just say it's never going to be the same again, because that kind of attitude is very pessimistic, and it's. So I hear there's rumors about, like, them ending the show or rebooting it, and while I think that's sad, I think that might be a good thing for, like, just creativity purposes. Just maybe give it a new edge, give it a rest. So basically what I want to say is I feel very split in the fandom between all these different opinions. But yeah, I guess I'll get into more of that in another video. Big World, Big Adventures, I think, is just painfully average, and that's all I can say.